The Boxing Dogman of Missouri. Dear Scary Stories NYC. When I was a kid, a big event happened on and near my family's farm in Missouri, one that we still talk about but don't even know how to describe. Unlike some of the states to our north, I don't think we have much of a tradition of people sighting werewolves or dogmen or whatever you want to call them. I mean the critters that are sort of like Bigfoot but seem more like bipedal dogs in some descriptions, or even movie werewolves in other sightings. We had a grand total of 1 of these events in my lifetime, and honestly a lot of us still don't know what happened that day. We never saw creatures like these ever again, so it was a fluke, a one-time experience, but quite a memorable one. I'd say there are 20 of us that saw it that day, and the 3 of us I know of who are willing to talk about it, and still living sort of nearby. Neither my brother nor my sister wants to have anything to do with this episode, but I got 2 of my friends to come help me. We're going to call ourselves A, B, and C, so as to remain anonymous. I am C, as I was the 3rd of us to see the animals fighting and chasing each other. But like I said, on that day there were more than just us 3. We're just the last survivors willing to talk about it that I'm aware of, since this happened something like 54 or 55 years ago now. The first of the people I could locate for this project to see the creatures on that day actually lived on a different road entirely, but he was sleeping over with a family that lived up north of me. His shared bedroom window that night looked out on all this green farmland. The plan was for the family he was sleeping over with to bring him to church, where he would meet up with his family and go home after the service. So when he got up that Sunday morning, he and the friend he was staying over with got the sight of their lives when they looked out that window onto the farmland. He wrote up his memories of the sighting for me. And so here is A with the first of our 3 reminiscences. So this was 1969 and I was 13 years old. This is my major childhood memory. I still dream about it. It did not happen at night. It happened around 7 or a little after 7 on a Sunday of all days. I had slept over with a friend to watch a monster movie on Saturday night, and we were up getting dressed for breakfast, and then we were going to head down to the church down Route 19 south of us, where I would regroup with my parents and siblings. The friend I was staying with whooped really loudly and called me over to the window, where we saw this sight that I know I will never forget. I would forget my own name before this incredible image. Outside this home was an intersection of 2 country roads. Paved roads, I mean, but stretching through a whole lot of farmland and forest land interspersed. People live spaced out over here. It gives us room to walk around in, unlike the cities or even the suburbs. Outside, there was this big werewolf, like bigger than any man. It wasn't wearing any clothing, and it had a dog head over a body that was kind of a mix of a bear and a dog and a man. But bigger than any of those. Bigger than a bear, even. He was standing there scratching himself, and looking behind this bush at something that we couldn't see. This went on for maybe half a minute, and then the next thing you knew, this other werewolf-type monster came out from behind the bush, and there were 2 of them. We were more excited than scared because neither of those things cared at all about us. They were mad at each other, and were waving their claws all around, acting like they were fighting, but almost never actually seeming to connect with the other guy, if you know what I mean. So these monsters were fighting at the edge of the lawn of these people's property, just this side of the intersection outside. My friend ran out of the room screaming to his parents that there were 2 giant calico cats having a fight outside. And I'm glad he said that, because I might not have noticed the strange patchy fur that the 2 creatures had if he hadn't. They were too wolf-like in my opinion to be cats, but my friend was correct in that they had calico-like fur. That is to say, there were patches that were dark brown, patches that were light brown, patches that were gray, and so forth, like a calico cat. These 2 looked more like wolfmen than cats to me, but they were bigger and more muscular than any movie wolfman I'd ever seen. Both of them had tails, but they were very different from each other. The one had sort of what you might expect a dog's tail to look like, but the other one had a tail like a lion. It was thin, but then had a big burst of fur toward the end, similar to the way a lion's tail does. So the mixed-up coloring of the two made them look like brothers, but the different tails indicated that there were definitely differences between the two. One was taller and thinner. He seemed to be using a scratching attack when he fought, while the shorter and more muscular one balled his clawed paws into fists and kept trying to knock the other guy's block off. When he fought, he planted his feet hard on the ground and punched away, while the taller one was a lot lighter on his feet and seemed ready to start running away anytime he saw a possible opening to escape. It was clear he didn't want this fight as much as the shorter and more muscular one did. Eventually, the taller and thinner one took off running down the road, and the muscle-bound one ran after him. It's a lot of farmland they were running through, but eventually, if they kept going, they were going to enter into the woods. I knew 2 kids who lived down that way, and I wondered if either of them could maybe get a photo of the monsters when they got that far south. I asked if I could use these people's phone, and I called 2 of my friends who lived down Mill Creek Road to the south. The first was the person we are calling B for today, and the second was the organizer of this project in 2023, who we are calling C. Here is the testimony of B. I got a call on Sunday morning from A, who I was friends with from school and church both, to go outside with a camera and get ready to take a picture. I started begging my parents to use my father's camera, but he absolutely forbade it. While I was haggling with them, we heard rumbling footsteps. I swear it sounded like a bunch of horses approaching, but at the same time, it didn't. Like it was all the deep rumbling of 2 or 3 horses, but none of the clippity-clop sounds they make. When we looked out the window, all 3 of us saw 2 immense creatures that we since learned are Dogman or werewolves, and they were running down the road toward our house. It wasn't clear at first that one was chasing the other. I could only see that they were tear-assing down the road, running upright on 2 legs the way men would do it. I saw one about to drop to all 4s, but the other guy grabbed him, and the next thing you knew, they were fighting right in front of our house. One of them was a flat-footed boxer type of a fighter, but the other one kept his claws out and tried to tear the opponent to pieces. I couldn't believe my eyes, and I begged my father to get his camera. And now my mother joined me in screaming at my father to take pictures, and he yelled back that he never knew where she put the stuff he needed when he needed it. My parents started arguing over where the unused camera film was stored in the house, and before they got back to the front, the creatures had already run off. That's pretty much all I can remember, except that my mother complained that they smelled up the neighborhood when they ran through. Thank you, A and B. Now it's my turn, since I was the third of us to see these things. So we had finished breakfast and we were dressed to go to church by the time the creatures got down to our neck of the woods. My family didn't own a working camera at the time, so there was nothing for us to argue about. Instead, we oohed and ahed and drank it all in with our eyes. I would have to say that these things were almost double the size of a man, and I bet they weighed over 500 pounds each. That is just a guess, but the thinner one was taller than the muscular one, and I bet they both weighed up around the same thing. My dad and I literally cheered when the 2 of them stopped down 100 yards from our house to have a fight with each other. We didn't just get to see them run by. We got to see them try to kill each other. Let me say, if those were brothers, there was no love lost in that family. The tall one was trying to tear the other one's eyes out, and that one kept pounding his fist so hard into his opponent's body, I couldn't believe the bones weren't ground into dust inside of him. This did not seem to be a play fight, and I expected that it was going to end in some savage tragedy. In fact, I was hoping for it. Me and my dad were wrestling fans, and this was the single greatest wrestling match of all time. I had the muscle guy to win, and Dad wanted him too, but just for sport. He cheered the taller one, and my mother was horrified at our behavior. Especially on a Sunday, I remember her exclaiming in an exasperated fashion. So there came a moment when that big old muscle man Dogman finally connected with the taller one's chin, right? I mean, he'd been trying to do that, but 95% of his punches didn't hit anything but air. When he finally did connect, it sounded like someone hit a home run out of the park. Do you know that sound? Like you whacked that guy in the chin with a baseball bat. That's what it sounded like. And I thought, that's it. He cracked that tall one's skull. And I didn't just expect the taller one to be knocked out. I expected him to be heading up to heaven to meet his maker. But that big, tall, calico Dogman, he only took a step or two backward. He didn't even fall down. He did look pretty cross-eyed. He looked a lot more scared than he had 2 seconds earlier. But it didn't kill him. It did put the deep fear in him, though, and he turned and ran way deeper into the woods. My mother said something about how she was glad that was over. Dad said she shouldn't be too sure about that. When she asked him what he meant, he pointed out that the two Dogmen had chased each other south in the direction of our church. But that was the last anyone I knew saw either of those monsters. They must have run back into the farce that they no doubt had run out of in the first place. This topic was something that even the adults found interesting to talk about. And so after church, people stood around outside, discussing the exciting news of that morning. We didn't even know what to call the monsters at that point, and a few of the more religious people were calling them hairy devils. Much of the discussion centered on being ready with cameras and film next time, while some of the fathers were more interested in having conversations about the weapons they were going to buy in case the creatures came back to our vicinity. But they never did. Come back, I mean. I remember in the 90s one day thinking, those things never did come back, did they? And I answered myself saying, no, they did not. I had the internet by then, although it was a dial-up modem like 56K or maybe 128K by that time. And I looked online to see if I could find anything about real-life werewolves. I did find some stuff pretty quickly, although it was all about Michigan and Wisconsin, nothing from down Missouri way. And that's really all right with me, too. It's possible that we saw the last two of a dying breed of Calico, Missouri Dogman. I haven't found anything in my travels about Calico Dogman, so maybe they don't exist any longer. Maybe that's why people almost never report seeing Dogman from Missouri. Because maybe in Missouri, the Dogman has gone extinct. If you want to see a person who is wise and caring, then look no further than our EP Sharon. Please join me in thanking today's executive producer Sharon Smirnoff, who is a dues-paying member of our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. As such, she gets to see our weekly secret uncensored scary Dogman and werewolf episodes. If you'd like to join, we have 2 different clubs. Here to explain both is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Thank you. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.